From the Skyterra Wellness Retreat, this is the Inspired Intentions Podcast, where we help people build the skills and mindset to live a healthy life. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's episode, if you've been enjoying our podcast, take a moment to rate and review. It may seem like a small thing, but our ratings and reviews make a huge difference in the quality of our show. They help us reach more listeners like you so we can continue bringing you more amazing content. So, if you've found inspiration, learned something new, or just love tuning in every week, please rate the Inspired Intentions Podcast 5 stars and leave us a review and even share with a friend. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now let's get into the show. Inspired Intentions listeners, welcome back again on this Monday. We have another new topic for you, something that we never quite talked about in this manner. I think it's been mentioned a few times, but we're diving into it today. I have none other than our fitness director, Ryan Lee, here in the booth with me. And you know, when I bring Ryan on, it's going to be something interesting.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alan.
Of course. Thanks for agreeing to come back on and talk. We presented this topic to you, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and the amount of research and information and knowledge you had on this astounds me when I started looking through all the notes that we came up with. But before we get to what our actual topic is, how's fantasy going, Ryan?
Oh, you know, we're off to I would say a slow start, but we're doing reasonably well. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited just generally speaking that the season is upon us.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you something to do on the weekends again. And I get to enjoy it with my son, my whole family, but primarily my son. So something I look forward to every Sunday.
Hey, it's part of the rules. No help from the kids, okay?
There may have been some influence during the draft. I'm not going to lie, but, you know, I don't know if it was good or bad influence, but...
Listeners, if you remember, we talked about our Skyterra Fantasy Football League in an episode weeks ago. It's happening now, and this is Ryan's first go-round with our Skyterra Fantasy Football League. Yeah. So we'll see what goes. You won your first game.
Yeah.
You won the first one.
Hey, we'll see. I don't know. We got some tough competitors coming up.
What's your fantasy name?
So this is a throwback to an old professional wrestler, and my fantasy name is Big Papa Pump.
Big Papa Pump.
Big Papa Pump.
What wrestler is that?
That is one of the Steiner brothers.
Oh, I have no idea. Wasn't a big following wrestling very much when I was a kid. But one thing I'm sure that probably a lot of those wrestlers did use is a sauna.
Possibly.
And that's actually, listeners, what we're going to talk about today, not fantasy football. Yeah. We have a sauna here on campus at Skyterra. And I've always been super curious about what all the benefits could be, and Ryan's knowledge on that. It's immense, and that's what we're going to dive into. Maybe you have access to one at home. Maybe you plan on coming here. If you're like me, I've used our sauna here at Skyterra literally once, and I think Ryan's going to convince me that I need to use it more. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that it's an absolute fair statement.
Okay.
Yes. Awesome.
Well, let's start with that. Like, sauna, like, are we talking about a traditional sauna? Because I know there's different types. I don't know. Is a traditional sauna like a steam sauna? There's another type though, right?
Yeah. So there's options when it comes to sauna usage. You know, you have both steam saunas, sometimes just referred to as a traditional sauna.
Okay.
These are going to be saunas where you can actively put water over top of the hot rocks that are typically stored inside of the sauna. But you also have the option of, you know, pursuing an infrared sauna, which tend to be a little less intense. Infrared saunas do not typically reach the same temperature as a traditional sauna, but still plenty of health benefits that can come via that pathway as well. But yes, there is a distinction between the two, especially when it comes to the intensity of the experience.
And the one that we have here on campus, I'm assuming is a steam sauna because I was pouring water over the rocks the one time I used it.
That is correct. Yep. So we have a traditional sauna, gets nice and hot in there, and then you have the ability, you know, through placing water over the rocks or the coals, you have the ability to increase the humidity inside the environment.
Understood.
Yep.
And so all the research that you've done, is it talking about both kinds? Like, what's the one or the other?
Yeah, I mean, the research is varied, but most of the research that has developed has been focused on traditional saunas. Saunas that are capable of reaching, a minimum temperature of 160, 170 degrees
Okay.
and higher.
Yeah, I was curious how hot one got. I'm also assuming that there's a lot more research because the infrared probably haven't been around as long. I'm guessing.
Yeah. And again, I don't know the history of when,
Yeah.
the infrared sauna kind of came on the scene. I just remember when I first kind of started dabbling in the space, I was doing some reading on it. Can't even remember how it presented itself originally, probably just through exploration of different podcasts. And at that point, this was quite a few years ago, probably 10 years ago.
Are you aging yourself now?
I am a little bit. Yeah, 10 years goes quick. But I can remember making the active decision to purchase an infrared sauna at the time. I just didn't have the financial capability at the time of going the traditional route. So,
Yeah.
but dropping $1,000 at the time was not a small price to pay. But there was just so much research even at that point. The things that I was hearing, it was something that I thought from a health benefit standpoint, this is something that I'd like to commit to and have it at my disposal right from home.
Yeah, so let's dive right into that. So we're talking about traditional sauna, basically the steam saunas. What are those benefits? Is it very cut and dry? Is there just one? Would you say there's a lot of benefit to it?
Yeah, there's really a ton of different benefits. And I think depending on what you're looking to get out of it, you'll benefit in many different ways.
Yeah.
But I think that you can focus in on, what those benefits might mean to you along your health path. We have everything from recovery from workouts. I think probably the first thing that we think of is, I have sore muscles. I've been working out all week. Let me go do a sauna session. Like that might help. And there is a lot of research that backs that for the fact that saunas are vasodilators, which means that literally our vascular system is dilating when we enter into those, high heat environments. And as a result, we get increased blood flow, and that blood flow tends to bring additional oxygen. It also helps us to remove waste products such as lactic acid. So from a repair and recovery standpoint, I think saunas are often used by, athletes and non-athletes alike, just for recovery purposes. So that's a big one.
You'd say that's one of the major ones?
I would say it's one of the major ones. I think we naturally feel great when we exit a sauna, and that could simply be because of increased oxygen circulation.
Sure.
But it tends to have a relaxation effect on the muscular system. So you just feel better. You feel as though you've given your body something that it needs, and I feel like that's a noticeable effect as soon as you exit. So that's a big one. But I think that some of the research that has now come out, primarily out of Finland tends to really produce a lot of these studies in looking at longevity effects.
Okay.
Just because I think it's embedded in the culture. There's a lot of sauna use there. Now we're realizing that there is tremendous health benefit at a cellular level. So to shed some light on that, I can still remember when I had read about some of these studies early on, and they have replicated themselves over and over again. But I was hearing about this idea that if you were saunaing several times per week, that you could reduce your all-cause mortality by something like 40%. So we could avoid death from any cause other than accidental death by 40% if we were regularly using a sauna throughout the week.
Interesting. 40%?
By 40%.
You said that study's been replicated?
It has been. Yeah, so even recent research that has come out has replicated this. The one that we were, taking a look at before we hopped on together here today, we were looking at an article from JAMA, which is the Journal of the American Medical Association. And they were taking a look at a large sample of individuals who would sauna anywhere between 4 and 7 times per week. Now, these were individuals that they tracked over the course of 20 years. And what they found was that through I don't want to say the simple use of the sauna, because we know that, it can be quite the experience being in such a high heat environment.
Yeah.
But through the use of a sauna, that number of times per week, that they were able to reduce their all-cause mortality rate by 40%. So
it's really interesting.
It's unbelievable. And I was thinking at the time, and even now, I think if you could put those effects into a pill form, and you told someone, hey, take this pill, and this pill will literally reduce your risk of death by 40%. I don't think there would be anyone who wouldn't take that pill.
I mean, yeah.
So it has like such high return on investment. And if we want to expound on that a little bit, the nuances of it are really that there's this concept that's called hormesis. And hormesis is this biological phenomenon where when we expose the body to low-level threats, and that could come in the form of heat, it can come in the form of cold, it can come in the form of fitness. Anytime we're stressing the body in moderation or only slightly, the body has this amazing capability of building back stronger and better.
Yeah.
And the sauna is a great example of that, where we enter into a space where in a small dose, it can really have some huge benefits. If we stay in too long, it could be really detrimental. So this concept of hormesis it's pretty astounding. So with that, when you enter into a high heat environment like a sauna, what happens is we have heat shock proteins that essentially are activated within our body. These heat shock proteins are literally the result of us experiencing that kind of heat stressor.
Okay.
And heat shock proteins have an uncanny ability of helping to preserve the structural integrity of proteins inside of our cells. And all of our proteins have a natural folding, three-dimensional shape. And, without getting too far into the weeds, the structure of those folds need to be intact in order for proteins to do their jobs. Now, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes the folding process, when a protein is being developed or replicated, they don't fold properly. And through the improper folding of those proteins, the cells can develop clusters of those improperly folded proteins called aggregates.
Yeah.
And essentially, they can continue to cluster together and form plaques in our body. And this is the reason why there's tons of
Interesting.
research. Yeah. This is the reason why these heat shock proteins, they have an ability to make sure that those proteins are being folded properly, that they're doing their job and maintaining their structural integrity. So this is the reason why we're also seeing huge benefits when it comes to neurodegenerative diseases. So inside of our brain, if we can avoid the improper folding of those proteins, those heat shock proteins do their job through the exposure of heat, then all of a sudden we're seeing reductions in things like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's disease. And some of those statistics are astounding.
Wow. Those are major diseases.
Absolutely. And there's probably a lot to discuss there in terms of, why exactly it's taking place. But if we know that a sauna could be a tool in our toolbox to help mitigate some of those potential dangerous occurrences from taking place, why not?
Yeah, why not? You hesitated to say simple, but yes, staying in for too long can be bad, right? We'll talk a little bit about that, but it really is as simple as just going in there and sitting down. Yes, you have to divide your time out. You have to make sure that you have access to one. You might have to pay for that, whatever. There's some complexities there, but the actual action itself isn't, 30 minutes of weightlifting. It's not, jumping into an ice cold bath, like a cold dip or anything, or running a mile or anything. It's you go in and sit down for a few minutes.
Exactly. I think you bring up a good point where it is approachable, because even when you step inside of a sauna, it can feel like a very powerful experience. You step into that heat and it can, kind of jolt you a little bit.
Yeah.
But there's a gradual acclimation process that takes place there, where you're not just wanting to jump out immediately.
True.
So that's the reason why I love it, is that it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're heat adapted yet, which is something that takes place, in your body over time and exposure to a sauna. So anyone can get in there, even for a few minutes to start, and reap some of the benefits.
Yeah, I've only been in ours or any sauna once, and I didn't find it unapproachable at all.
Yeah.
I found it fairly easy to just, you open the door, you go and sit down. And it's pretty obvious. There's a bucket of water and you pour it over the rocks.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It's really interesting. So these heat shock proteins and Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Some of the studies that have come out with that, I know we were talking about all-cause mortality, but along the same, I guess you could call it dosage of sauna use, we were seeing 60 to 65% reductions in Alzheimer's for people who were religiously using a sauna 4 to 7 times per week. and hitting those temperature thresholds, which I know we have not talked about yet.
Yeah,
but
we'll get there.
Yeah. I think something else just to consider is, we're kind of talking about the science behind what's going on, inside of the body. I think that there's also some I don't want to call them surface level benefits, but there's even the benefit of having a slight uptick in your metabolism, post saunaing. Sometimes people ask me questions about, I hear that you sweat a lot when you go in the sauna. Is that an effective tool for weight loss? And while I would not say your sauna is going to be your key to your weight loss goals, we do know that there is some additional caloric output. We're going to burn more calories just from the natural rise in our heart rate, increased circulation, right? So there is some benefits along those lines as well, which is pretty cool.
Interesting. The dilation that you're talking about, it brings up a question that you're not prepared for. I don't think you have an answer to, but just a curiosity of mine. I'm wondering about like migraines and headaches, because that's a lot of vascular dilation that needs to happen to help those out. I know a lot of medications do that. I wonder if there's been any studies about the benefit of sauna for headaches.
Yeah.
That could be a good thing that you and I can look into. Maybe we do a little 5-minute episode on that as kind of like a recap, but something I'm interested in because I've suffered from headaches and migraines for a long time.
That is interesting. I remember having a couple of close friends similar to you who, suffered from migraines, and I remember them just talking about how the only thing that would help was getting into like a really hot shower. And maybe there's the same kind of effect that's taking place there, through the kind of vasodilation, you're able to bring whatever type of
ease
to that type of situation.
I've experienced that myself for sure. That's just a curiosity. Listeners, maybe we'll look into that next.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
So you've kind of touched on still on the benefits, but you've said recovery and relaxation. And then this idea of kind of what it's doing in your body, heat shock proteins and some of the benefits, some of the studies that have been done. Is there any other benefits that you found in your time using saunas and research that you think kind of stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe one other that we haven't touched on is this idea of BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Okay.
This is going to be a protein that is primarily assisting in the growth and survival of neurons in our brain. And through the exposure to heat, we have an uptick in BDNF. And what that's doing for us is it's helping to facilitate neuroplasticity. It's strengthening those neural connections in our brain.
Okay.
And all that does is help with things like learning, memory, cognitive function. So this is the reason why we also see that, we can maybe stave off dementia as we age because of the effect that BDNF is having on the brain through sauna use.
Interesting. Why does neurotropic sound familiar? Isn't neurotropic supplements a really big thing right now?
Yeah, neurotropic supplements are kind of classified as supplements that help us with cognitive processing.
Same thing. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Gotcha. That's really, really interesting. It sounds like there's a lot of benefit for the mind.
Yeah.
And we do talk a lot about benefits to the body in various ways, but the mind is just as important. And I see people taking care of their body way more often than they're taking care of their mind.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's just what happens to us naturally, as we age, we decline mentally.
Sure.
And, if we can preserve those neural connections, we can preserve the integrity of the brain, then I think that you see that decline slows. This is a great, like I said, such an amazing return on investment. If I know that I have to sit in a sauna for 20 minutes, let's say 4 times a week, that sounds like a pretty minimal amount of time to give up in order to benefit in all these different ways.
Yeah, for a lifetime.
Exactly.
Sounds like.
Exactly.
So we've kind of danced around this idea of, I kind of cut you off a few times about how long and kind of what the protocols are about, like how long you stay in the sauna, how much steam do you use, things like that. I have an idea, Ryan. I think we should take a field trip.
Where to?
Well, let's find out. Listeners, we'll be right back.
Okay, listeners, we are
at our destination for our field trip. I don't know if you can hear it, but it sounds a little bit different in here, perhaps a little more echoey. And that is because Ryan and I have actually ventured to our sauna. We've taken this show on the road, and we are getting toasty in here. This is my second time in this room ever, and I thought no other appropriate place to really talk about the protocols and procedures of how long, how much of being in a sauna than to do it in our sauna, and Ryan so graciously agreed.
Well, it's a beautiful sauna space.
It is.
And it is getting nice and roasty in here already. But yeah, definitely the appropriate time, I think, to talk to listeners about general protocols if you're interested in getting into sauna use. I know we had discussed some of the clinical research that had been done, and one of the things to remember is that when it comes to reductions in all-cause mortality, it's dose dependent. We know what some of the factors are at play when it comes to temperature, time duration, etc.
Okay.
So in the one study that we referenced, we were mentioning how the sample participants were using saunas for 4 to 7 times per week. That was at a temperature of about 174 degrees.
174. Do you know what it is in here right now?
It's a good question. Sometimes I think we can get a little read from the outside on that digital
It's on the
thermometer.
outside. Gotcha.
Yeah, but I would say that we're definitely going to be close when it comes to the sauna space. But that's generally the temperature range that you're looking to aim for, simply because that's where the bulk of the research has come from.
Gotcha.
is right about at that threshold. We're also looking at time durations, as we mentioned, of about 20 minutes. It's not to say that's where you would begin if you were starting a sauna protocol, but 20 minutes was kind of the dose, if you will, for receiving the benefits that were derived from that individual study.
Gotcha.
So if you were able to perform 4 to 7 sessions at 174 degrees for 20 minutes, that's where we were seeing the reduction in all-cause mortality of about 40%. What's interesting, though, is that within the same study, they looked at a sample of individuals who simply stayed in the sauna for 11 minutes as opposed to 20 minutes.
Okay.
And with that shorter amount of exposure to the heat, we saw an 8% reduction in all-cause mortality.
It's a drastic difference over 9 minutes.
100%. So it certainly goes to show that this is dose dependent. That if you're looking to gain those benefits for brain functioning that we talking about cellular repair, if you can work yourself up to that 20-minute benchmark, then that's really what we should be aiming for. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was that sometimes just the number of days that we're using the sauna can also influence the general outcomes.
Yeah.
So in these studies, we talked about 4 to 7 days per week. In cases where individuals only were in the sauna for a singular day, we saw reductions of about 24% as opposed to 40. So you can see that there's some things to be manipulated here.
Right.
How long will you be in for? How many days per week will you actually use the sauna? And what should the temperature be? So I'm hoping that we shed a little bit of light on that.
Gotcha.
And then I think that kind of brings us back to when you step into the sauna, as you and I are experiencing right now, it's hot. Your body is being thrown into a little mini state of fight or flight. It's kind of signaling to the body, don't stay in this environment for too long. It would not be beneficial for you. So as a result, you want to go slow with this process. Even today, if you and I stayed in here for 15 minutes, I haven't been in the sauna for probably over a week at this point. I'm probably going to hit the wall a little bit faster than I would if I was using the sauna every day.
Sure.
And you can literally feel that difference. You will become heat adapted, relatively quickly. If I do several consecutive days of sauna use, my body responds more efficiently to that heat exposure. So I would say step into it casually and slowly, aiming for maybe 5 minutes in your first session, and then as you do it more often, maybe you start to aim up to 10, maybe you get to 15, eventually maybe you hit that 20-minute benchmark.
So it's literally just slowly turning that burner up. You don't suggest 20 minutes straight off the bat. I'm feeling it already.
Yeah.
I haven't been in this thing in almost 2 years, I guess. It's been.
Yep, absolutely. So I think you're going to have less control over temperature, especially if you're using a sauna in a gym space. Perhaps if you have your own setup at home, you'd be able to manipulate that variable. But I would certainly aim to manipulate the time of exposure. Go in 5 minutes, and like we said, then you can ratchet it up slowly. Hopefully get to that 20-minute time frame.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And I see a little, looks like timer on the wall over here. Your little hourglass sand deal.
Yeah. Sometimes the saunas come with those built-in timers, kind of give yourself a visual.
Yeah.
Especially when it starts to get a little bit tough.
Yeah, super helpful.
Yeah. And like we said too, I think it's important to remember that we talked about that idea of hormesis, which is your body's natural ability to adapt to stressors. We have to remember that this is a stressor, right? So even though we sometimes think about sauna as being a form of relaxation and recovery, I think we have to go into it with the mindset of this is going to feel a bit uncomfortable. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't feel too uncomfortable to where it could be detrimental. You want to make sure you're not staying in the sauna for too long, becoming dehydrated, maybe having no one know that you're in the sauna. So I think these are all just healthy measures to take into account.
This might be a question that you're not prepared for, but do you suggest before or after a workout?
So that's a good question. I think that there are some individuals who like to use sauna as an extension piece to workouts. They feel like they've already increased their core body temperature, elevated their heart rate, and then the sauna just kind of becomes something that we tack on to the tail end.
Sure.
And then for others, it's a standalone, isolated experience where maybe you wake up first thing in the morning, you hop in the sauna, or as an evening activity. To end your day with sauna outside of fitness or strength training. What we do know though is that your ability to stay in the sauna can be influenced by what you do prior to sauna use. So if I did a pretty intense cardiovascular training session or strength training, if I come into the sauna at the tail end of that, it's more likely that I will only be able to stay in for a shorter period of time. And that's simply because the body's already been exposed to stress. Your core body temperature is higher. So something to think about. You may not be able to knock out a 20-minute session after you've already worked out, but you might be able to hop in for 10 minutes, post-workout, and then you kind of get a coupling effect.
Cool. So. Sweet, man. Well, I think I've had enough already.
I'm good, yeah.
Yeah. Let's go head back to the booth and finish this thing out. Listeners, we'll be right back.
Sounds good. All right, so we just got out. How are you feeling? What's your body saying to you?
Well, my body's saying this podcast room is a lot colder than the sauna is.
Fair enough.
Since we just got back in here. But I feel very aware, and I feel it. I feel very awake. I was a little deprived of sleep before we got in there, but it's definitely changed my mood a little bit.
Yeah, of course. And I think that happens, like we said, we are inducing a sense of like a small dose of stress to the body.
Sure.
So as a result, we're getting an uptick in adrenaline. We come out of there, we're feeling like we're alive. We're ready to do something big.
So for all the listeners at home, what do you want them to kind of do now? I mean, they need to find a sauna, right?
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the challenges that arises.
Okay.
If you are a guest here at Skyterra, we have a sauna here, right? And that's a luxury. You can just venture on down. You can hop in when you want to.
Right.
But when you're at home, that is something that not everyone has at their disposal. We know that there are a lot of gym spaces that offer, saunas. And I think that could be something that you always look for if you're choosing a gym membership or a place to work out. Having a sauna as an extra amenity is something, pretty critical in my opinion. I would also say too, before even venturing down the path of purchasing a sauna for your home, there are a lot of credible sources right now who are willing to further enlighten you on the benefits of sauna use. I've been following Dr. Rhonda Patrick for a very long time, Dr. Peter Attia, Dr. Andrew Huberman, and these may sound familiar to you. They've kind of forged a path when it comes to the benefits of sauna and bringing that to the masses. So I've really valued tuning into their, different podcasts and reading their books. So I think just enlighten yourself as much as you possibly can. The more you read about it, the more you listen, I think you become additionally more motivated. Every time I hear these statistics, I think, I have to find 20 minutes this week to hop in the sauna.
Yeah.
So that would be my first aim. And then there's a lot of options if you choose to, purchase a sauna for your home. You could always take the route of, a infrared sauna that might be a little bit more cost effective. But I think even traditional saunas are becoming more accessible for a lot of us. I love the aesthetics of a barrel sauna, which is a traditional sauna.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, just in barrel form. And, they're both for indoor and outdoor use, so you can throw it in the backyard. You might have to get an electrician to help you out in terms of the connections. But, I think once you have something like that set up, then you have no excuse as to why you're not getting in.
Yeah, this is just a random question because I haven't had a gym membership in years because we have a gym here at Skyterra, and I work out here. But is that a common thing you can find in like gyms or like YMCAs or?
Yeah, I mean it's quite varied, and,
Sure.
And I've had a lot of friends in the past who I've talked to about this, and when they're looking for a gym membership, one of the first things they're asking about is, do you have a sauna?
Really?
Yeah, and that can be a deciding factor for a lot of people because, some people are using the sauna just in an isolated way. Maybe they're just going to get into the sauna for 20 minutes. But a lot of people also use it on the tail end of workouts too, just as a way to lengthen the workout experience. You figure you're already strength training or you're doing some cardiovascular training. You've increased your internal body temperature. You've already induced that stress state, if you will. So some people enjoy then hopping in. Maybe you're not in for 20 minutes because, again, the body's already a little bit taxed. But it's a really nice add-on to some of the strength cardiovascular types of training that people are already doing. So that's why I love, if I have it at a gym, then it just becomes a nice little addition to my routine.
Nice. And if listeners are curious and they want some more information on this, I know you just mentioned a couple of folks, but you also wrote a blog about this, right?
We did, yep. Recently put together a blog that I would say hits on some of the major points that we discussed today, reminding you of the research related to sauna use, and just helping us to kind of understand the effects that it's having on our body. Again, helping us to stay in tune with why it can be beneficial in our life.
Absolutely. And you can get that, listeners, at skyterrawellness.com. You can go read that blog on there if you need that, basically this podcast and more in written form.
Yeah.
Ryan, anything we missed, man? Anything?
I don't think so. I think we just got to step into the heat.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. So continue to step toward the things that challenge you.
Yeah.
And I think sauna is another example of that. If we can do that safely, anytime you can step toward a stressor and come out on the other side better, stronger, more resilient, it's a win.
Well, I feel enlightened about the subject. I'll speak for hopefully everyone that they do as well. I appreciate your time and your knowledge on this, and I also appreciate you taking a field trip with me and doing our first at least segment of a podcast outside of this podcast room. That was cool.
100%. This is going to have to be a weekly thing for us now.
Yeah, we can figure it out. Maybe we'll come back and even do a segment about, if we do some research on a 5-minute about more further benefits of sauna and that idea of migraine, we could do that down there.
Great.
That'd be cool. Okay. Well, listeners, thank you again. Ryan, we'll have you back on if you have questions for us. You can hit us up at inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. That's an email address. You can send us an email, and we will hopefully get your questions answered about this topic or anything else. Till next time, everyone.
Yeah, it's been a blast. See you guys.
Thanks.
The Inspired Intentions podcast is a production of Skyterra Wellness Retreat. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alan Broyhill. Send us your questions and comments to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Subscribe on iTunes and everywhere podcasts can be found. If someone you know might benefit from this podcast, share Inspired Intentions with them and give us a 5-star rating. Join us next week as we cut through the unrealistic noise on diets and fitness and show you how healthy living fits seamlessly into your already busy life. Thanks for listening.